The Shadowlands is hurtling at a meteoric rate. It is coming soon. It's imminent. The pre-patch is up, and now Blizzard is in the class tuning phase. That means they're moving talents around, they're going to start swapping spell powers, all that kind of stuff, buffing and nerfing to try and get the game in a state ready for release. That means that a lot of the main features, which is Torghast, the Sanctums, the leveling, is all in place, including the Covenants. So let's have our final word on this. It's no secret the Covenants have been a controversial issue since they were announced. Some people seeing extreme positives, some people seeing extreme negatives, and it's been a war ever since. And unfortunately, that war has turned into how it always goes with World of Warcraft discussions, and in fact how it always goes in the rest of the world. The argument is now basically on the principle of the matter rather than what the actual matter is. I have read through your forum posts, be it MMO Champ, Reddit, the WoW forums. I have watched the videos of the people who are very pro in terms of the Covenant player power, which I think we should clarify again for so many people, as it keeps being referred to as Covenant swapping, which isn't what most people are asking for, at least I'm not asking for, which is that we just don't want the power associated to it, because it creates very obvious, very real, very significant issues for a lot of us. We don't want that to happen because it's never been a thing in this game. It's one of the reasons we enjoy this game, and why Blizzard is interfering with that is questionable, to say the least, but we'll get to that. Luckily, I don't need to. Recently, Blizzard put up a WoW survey asking people who have been testing this, who've been playing with it for a while, what do you think? Have we got it right? Is Preach just living in a bubble, or is this a real problem? And so far, it's been wondrous. The amount of replies is excessive. The EU forums are, of course, sadly lagging behind because they tend not to even be checked, at least from what we can tell. And it's all good stuff. There's no rage. There's no memeing. It's all people just trying to get out there that this seemingly has wild effects across their characters. And this isn't fun for a lot of people. Some of these abilities are just flat out superior in all situations. Of course, many people are arguing that, oh, you're not the best in all scenarios. Well, some of these are better in every single scenario. That's not an argument if you've been checking into this stuff. Some of these things won't matter. That's true. And why? They're just talents. That's all they are. At any other version of World of Warcraft, the Covenant spells and abilities would have just been talents. They wouldn't have been anything else. They are just your new class spells. That's all they are for the brand new expansion. Same as we had in the Burning Crusade, the Wrath of the Lich King, Mists of Pandaria, etc, etc. When you get a new expansion, you tend to get some new spells and abilities. That's all they are. That means they follow very similar, but not the same rules as if you went to a piece of content with the wrong talent. Are you likely to be fine? Yes. Yes, you are. I'm not going to deny that. That's nothing that I'm going to argue with. You're probably going to be okay for the content you do. Does that mean it's okay? No. No, it doesn't. And this is of vital, vital importance. Very often I see the argument is, it'll be okay. People will use what I just said to go, Preach says you'll be fine, so it's fine. No, that's not what I said. Will you be fine? Sure. For the most part, nearly everybody in the game will be fine. If you use the wrong talents, you'll be okay. Does that mean it's fine? No, absolutely not. Just because something doesn't break the game does not mean it's okay. That is a really invalid argument. It's a terrible point of assumption that if everything doesn't collapse, then it's all good. No, not in the least. Why is this a huge problem then? Well, again, I'll refer to this thread because we have to break it down from the principle of meaningful choice and all this stuff that people have built up. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the interactions I've had shortly, but they're just talents. And similar to how your talents work is some talents are just flat out better than others. Now this is where the weird discussion of meta slave comes on. People have chosen sides, they're entrenched in their sides and they have an enemy. They've created a boogeyman. Blizzard are the ones who decide the strength of talents. It's nothing to do with the players. So when players look at talents and they figure out that 2 of them do 1 damage and 1 of them does 4 damage and then they choose the one that does 4, that doesn't make them a meta slave. It's honestly one of the most absurd discussions I ever see. It's nothing to do with the players who figure out which ones are better. Because some of them are just flat out clearly better. And not everybody follows them either. We have statistical data on this. You can go to Warcraft logs right now, and you can look at the top 100 logs of every single class and spec in this game. And they're not using the same talents, even in the top 100 passes. Why? Because that's not how the game works, and it falls into yet another misconception a lot of people have, this idea of one solution for everything. That only makes sense if you're one of the guys this is probably targeted at, who looks at the build. They ask a streamer, they go to a website, they ask their friends, and they get what's the best talent setup, and then they stick with that forever. The reality is there's a whole multitude of answers depending on the situation. That's part of the fun of World of Warcraft. Every different affix in a Mythic Plus asks different questions. Is it Sanguine this week? Perhaps I want to take Typhoon this time round. Is it bolstering? Is it necrotic? Maybe I want trees. Is my tank weak? Maybe I want to take trees then there. Is the healer weak? Maybe I want to take some off healing. Do we take a lot of damage from stuff here? Maybe I want to prevent more damage coming my way. Do I need to move around a lot here? Maybe I want something more movement based and that's going to improve my play and make me a more useful and more wanted party member. That's totally normal. It's in fact very base normal for every human being in every walk of life, from work all the way to video games and sports. People like playing with the players that cause more success, and a lot of players like being more successful. It's as simple as that. It's a very, very normal thing. But to call it meta slaves is crazy. If I was to present you with 3 PCs and say you can have one for 3, and 2 of them were garbage, and one of them was a top-of-the-line AMD Ryzen Beast VR machine, and everybody took the VR machine, if I was to sit back smugly and go, haha, meta slaves, that would be honestly ridiculous. And that's a similar situation that we're finding ourselves in here, is that Blizzard are the ones who apply the numbers and the tuning to these spells, and we work with what we get. It's as simple as that. Which also means the 1%ers are also going to be fine. They're going to play around it just as they always have, just as they always will. Does that mean it's fine? No. No. Should that mean that players need to play around a very contrived system? Let me get back to the frustration I've been feeling. So last week on Twitter, I put out a very memey video, a very silly video that we put together in less than 6 minutes, which was honestly a response to my frustration. As again, this sort of figurehead of talking about this, I received comments from not only my fan base, but from everybody who has a vested interest in this matter. So my email inbox and my Discord was filling up with private messages of really well thought out, for the most part, really careful, really passionate is a word I would use, almost essays on the RPG aspect of what this has been sold as it has been marketed as. And people were explaining to me what I wasn't seeing as the big picture, because I don't care about the story. That's true. I don't care about transmog. That's true. I don't care about a lot of things in WoW. I like what I like, which is many other aspects that other people don't like. So people were explaining to me is that you're not seeing this, Mike. And they were going into how this was going to interplay and their character was going to be tied to their covenants and the covenant coming against each other. But essentially, that's fan fiction to the reality. The reality is absolutely nothing in the Shadowlands reflects the Covenant choice at all. I'm not just talking about player power, choosing a Covenant in any way, shape or form. It is not reflected in the least in the game. The whole concept of this being some sort of RPG element is dead. It doesn't exist inside the game world. Now, that has been twisted since then, because thankfully, and I want to say very big thank you to the guys who are interested in the story, who are interested into the context of our decisions, who came out and said, it's true, like this is anti-RPG. What's happening in the Shadowlands with the Covenants, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but you'll see it, so you can take my word on it if you want. But once you play through it, you'll see exactly what we're talking about. It is antithetical to what's actually happening inside of the game world and what's happening with our characters. They're completely at odds with each other. The system is, unfortunately, entirely contrived. Now, I want to put something clear here, because I have videos backing this up. Once the Covenant system was announced, I was one of the first people to say, this is really cool from an RPG perspective. Some people don't seem to understand that I love RPGs. Ever since I was a little kid, I played the Chrono Triggers, I played the original Final Fantasies, all the way to the modern RPGs. I've played many, many, probably hundreds of RPGs over my years of being involved with games. I love them. Very, very much. I have great fun with them and I love making choices in them because those choices affect what I'm doing in the game. They affect my game world. Those are always, for me, the funnest choices. Followers to choose if it's Mass Effect or Fallout, anything like that, and then finding out whether I like these people, what are they offering me, and then making a choice based on those things. That is not what takes place in the Shadowlands. A lot of people have brought up things like Knights of the Old Republic. Well, in that game, you are forced to choose Sith or Jedi, and that way you don't get access to the other's abilities. You see, it's the same as Shadowlands. No. I would argue, and I think pretty sensibly, that whether you choose to side with the Sith or the Jedi in a Star Wars game is a major story point. It's contextually accurate to what's going to happen in the world and the story that will play out after you make that choice. I think that's a pretty sensible thing. I have absolutely no idea what kind of RPGs people are playing, where at the end game you get to make some sort of choice that makes no sense inside the entire world, that hampers your choices of your gameplay in some way. I don't know that game. I've looked at every game suggestion. None of them have that aspect. It's just one of those things. And I'm sorry to say that, because I was also hoping, as many people know, I was also hoping that the Covenants would open up a whole world of RPG options for us. I would have loved that if I chose Kyrian and my friend chose Venthea, that at some point, maybe we sided together, but maybe we broke that trust, maybe we betrayed each other, maybe our world quests are similar to the Assault quests that are currently in BFA, but we're doing different things because now I'm working against you. Perhaps I've taken over one of your flight points later in the game and we can meme each other and we're telling a story, we're growing memories and doing all those things. Now, that's not to say at some point Blizzard might implement that. But right now, with what's happening in the Shadowlands, when we make this choice and the setting it's in, it makes no sense. It doesn't work. And saying that, well, in 9.2 or 9.3, you'll see the big reveal, that doesn't work. Because we already made that choice so long ago in the context of that world. Doesn't make sense then. It has to happen when it makes sense. Otherwise, it's just entirely contrived, which the system ultimately is. So, I'm sorry about that. For those of you who did write me those passionate emails, I did read them. I didn't reply to all of them, but I did read them. And unfortunately, it's just not the case. Coming back to it then. What are my predictions for this system? Well, Blizzard has put out this survey, which means they still have this on their radar. So there's a chance they will change it. I'm pessimistic at best about this. So, I mean, that should be no surprise to anybody. So my prediction is they probably won't, although I have a glimmer of hope in my eye, a sparkle that yes, they will. But it's a case of I think it will go live this way. What this also means then is when is this going to hit the fan? Because as much as I'm getting personally attacked now, that's not that strange. Happened with Azerite Armor, happened with the Allegiant Legendary acquisition, all things that eventually did cause problems. But not that I'm happy about that, I just wish it didn't go live that way. It's probably going to happen the exact same way. Most people do not watch this video. Most people who play World of Warcraft have absolutely no idea about any of this stuff. They're going to be completely surprised when they realise their Covenant choice also involved Soulbinds. Who are the Soulbinds? All these characters I met while I was leveling, I had no idea they had a talent tree. I had no idea about conduits. I had no idea that I then had to farm legendaries. I had no idea that I had to then go to the Maw to farm things for my Sanctum. This is going to be all new to all players, for a lot of players, once the game actually comes out. So it's going to take a little while. But it's going to happen. Some people are going to make a choice very early on based on what they did while leveling. And as you'll see if you read through the thread that I posted, a lot of people did not get any use out of their spells while leveling because they don't work while you're leveling. Yeah, it turns out those spells are really, really good when you stop leveling. When you do the actual endgame content, they become very, very relevant. But while leveling, they're pointless. They don't do anything. So they didn't choose them. Then they figure out it's what I want. They can change very quickly. Okay, resolved, right? Well, for some players, it's going to work that way. Then more and more players are going to start hitting the wall where they start noticing things. They're going to start noticing that maybe one of these Soulbinds does a flat 5% extra damage. And it kind of sucks because we're both the same player of the same class. But he just does 5% more? What's that? And that's going to be a thing that's going to come up. And other players are going to be doing their BGs and seeing that their fellow friends are doing things they can't do. And then they're going to be in an arena and the hunter they're fighting, although it's a mirror match, can shoot through walls. I can't. All these things are going to start happening and bunching up. We're then going to have the Mythic Plus scenario come up, and I recommend you watch Tettel's video on that as well. I'll link it down below. But there's another situation. They've added these buffs to dungeons. So if you think right now you've got a bunch of friends who you enjoy doing Mythic Plus with, you are now forced to start thinking about who's going to pick up each of the Covenants. And if you, God forbid, that you mix and match some teams sometimes because you're friends, you're going to have to take that into account as well. Because although this idea of the meaningful choice, there are restrictions in place. There are definite, real-world, tangible conflicts with making this choice. It's as simple as that. These are all very real things, and after a couple of months, it's going to start to bunch up. All the different elements of the player base are going to start hitting this wall. Of course, at the same time, people will call the system great. People will say, I chose what I wanted from the start, and I always play this spec, and I don't mind the spell, it doesn't affect me, or it's fine for what I do, and it's fine. And therefore the system is a success. We're going to have that as well. That is ultimately definitely going to be a thing where if people who either are unaffected by it or simply look at their friends doing things that they wish they could do but knowing they can't is a fun experience, which it very well could be for a lot of people, and calling it a success. I feel like this is the consequence that I asked for. We're not going to win this one. Let's put it that way. We're not going to win everybody over with this one, but it's going to... I feel in my heart of hearts, this is just a disaster waiting to happen. I don't know why they're doubling down on it. And if you're listening, Blizzard, I can't see... I've heard what you think is going to happen, like idyllic inclusion of people and stuff like that. This ain't it, Chief. This ain't it. I'm up for meaningful choices. I absolutely am. But I'm certainly not up for destroying and restricting players for seemingly entirely contrived reasons in order to achieve it. That's not what I'm down for. Thank you so much for listening, guys. I'll see you again. Bye-bye.